What's up? I'm Alexander23, and I'm hanging out with my man Rob on Front Row Live.
It feels like I've been trying to get with you for like 2 years, but it's only been 2019 since you dropped Dirty Air Force Ones. And like, it's just been tough to kind of get to connect with you just because like you've been busy and like 2020 has been such an insane year for you. I feel like with collaborations and like just with releases. Um, Talk to me a little bit about like what this like 2019, 2020 has been looking like for you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, thank you. I'm so glad we could finally make this happen, man.
No, for sure.
It's certainly been crazy. I mean, 2019, I put out my first song, yeah, in like spring of 2019, and right up until like the start of the, I was on tour like pretty much the entire time straight. Like touring is something that's super important to me. For me, like that's the best way I know how to like contextualize my music. Um, so I wanted to be on the road. It was important for me to be on the road for like the beginning phases of everything. And yeah, obviously since all of the stuff, like I've slowed down a bunch and have been mostly just in the studio kind of writing and kind of confronting new and old feelings kind of simultaneously. And I really miss the road, but I am grateful to kind of have some time to decompress and write.
You are still relatively a new artist, but like kicking off 2019 with like that debut single and like, as you mentioned, constantly being on the road, like how how challenging was that for you? Because at the same time, like, yeah, you want to be in front of your audience, but at the same time, you want to be able to write and create music. And, you know, you pretty much do this all yourself. So how are you able to still remain motivated and have that time and not just like kind of like exhaust yourself throughout this process?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was, I mean, I'm still finding the balance to be honest, but what I can say is that they, the touring and the studio life, at least for me, being that I do both of those, not alone, I definitely have like support and help, but I'm kind of the main actor in each of those. They kind of perpetuate each other in a really nice way. And I am informed by kind of the live show, kind of in the studio and vice versa in the studio to the live show. So they honestly, they go super hand in hand for me. Like I can't imagine having one without the other. There, it's all such an like integral part of my creative process.
Most recently, you dropped Brainstorm, your newest single, and the fact that like, well, for starters, like the thing that caught my attention about you was your storytelling. I love the way that you paint these pictures for us in the form of song. But how challenging is it to write a song like Brainstorm where it's so personal and it's like so vulnerable, and like being able to still kind of give us that painting that you kind of give us with every other song that you've created?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that. For me, like I spend 95% of the song creation process on lyrics. Like just so much time is kind of poured into the storytelling aspect and making sure that each word kind of communicates kind of the greater thesis of the song as best as it possibly can. And that doesn't always mean every line being the most poetic. Sometimes it means a line being extremely blunt and straightforward. Brainstorm specifically was kind of the first one where usually the songwriting process is the cathartic part of the whole thing, where that's kind of the emotional part, and then afterwards I'm able to kind of see the song as more of a commodity and something that can help someone else. Brainstorm is kind of the first song that like every time I play it, I still feel like I'm just writing it, which is kind of a new experience for me, and it's beautiful and it's very difficult, but I'm grateful for it at the end of the day.
And how are you able to kind of perform it and write it and not, I mean, I'm sure you probably haven't performed it yet, but like as far as like in the studio, how are you able to be okay kind of like recording the vocals and knowing that people are listening, people are paying attention?
Yeah, well, I think just as an artist, it's my duty to sometimes not be okay and to let that shine through. And I think, hopefully, at least for me, I can hear that in the vocal, that it's not a fun thing to sing about or a fun thing to feel or a fun thing to go through or watch someone else go through. And I think that's kind of the beauty of it at the end of the day is like, I'm gonna be honest in my songwriting. I'm gonna be honest in my performance in just the same capacity.
Now, one other thing that I love about you is that like kind of help other artists as well, both new and old. Like recently, I was talking to Maud Latour, and she explained how like the way that you produced with her like kind of helped her kind of discover her new sound and what she's all about. But like I feel like in doing so, it's also draining for you because you're trying to figure out yourself as an artist. So how does that balance look like for you when you're kind of trying to help other artists catapult and then you're still doing the same for
Yeah,
yourself?
totally. Yeah, I mean, Maud was, first of all, Maud's amazing, and I was lucky enough to kind of be there for like the conception of her kind of artistic identity, and I'm super grateful for that. For me, I, similar to like the performing and the songwriting, like the writing for myself and working with other artists, like I need both of those outlets equally bad. You know, like when I'm writing for me, most of the time, you know, 99% of the time I'm creating something for me, I'm completely by myself, which is amazing and I love it sometimes, but it can be very isolating, obviously. And so to get to kind of be the co-captain for someone else versus just being the one man manning a ship by yourself is really refreshing, and to get to more so be like a steroid or a catalyst for someone else's vision rather than having to steer the ship is something that I have found that I need and desire just as bad as steering my own ship.
The fact that you are under a major label, like you could have these, you know, this team behind you when you're in the studio, like um, why do you feel it's so important to stick to yourself? Like even though you could possibly just say, I want to work with this producer and then make it happen.
Yeah, totally. I mean, um, I my process I've found is not always super conducive to working with someone else. It's a lot of like silence and just like thinking and taking walks and stuff. Like my songwriting process isn't like that studio based, to be honest. Like a lot of the songwriting is not happening in the studio. So sometimes that can be difficult to um, work with and work around in a more collaborative setting. But having said that, like there are a few people that I do work with, and I have found that like those relationships are only that much more profound when like I do find
Mm.
someone that I do enjoy working with, um, that kind of understands me and understands my process and the way that I kind of think through things. But yeah, and I'm open to collaboration. Like I'm not closed. That door is never closed for me. I've just kind of found like what works best for me, at
Right.
least right now.
Now this year, like we saw how I Don't Know You Yet kind of catapulted your music with like TikTok and just like people kind of getting introduced to Alexander 23. What kind of impact did the success of that song have in like your new music today?
Um, I think that answer is kind of twofold. I think first of all, it was incredibly encouraging, especially being that the type of song it is in the current climate. Like that song only works if people relate to the lyrics. Like that's the reality of it, you know. And like I think certain songs work because people just feel the beat and they feel the groove and they feel the production. Certain songs work because they're just incredibly beautiful. Certain songs work because the melodies are just so good that they're stuck in your head. And in this, you know, climate, in this world, to have a song that kind of cuts through lyrically, for me as a songwriter, was like the best thing that I could ever ask for. And I'm so grateful that it did. But I'd also be lying if I said like it hasn't made it like a little bit more difficult to write, since knowing that that's kind of like the new bar, and that's kind of like my almost like songwriting superpower is like lyrics. And like I think in some ways I've gotten too bogged down in that and like forgotten kind of the other dimensions of songwriting and song creation process that can make it great.
Do you feel that you've had a hard time writing new material though?
Honestly, yeah, until like last weekend. And now like, I feel like more creative than ever. I like took a little trip by myself just to kind of like decompress and walk around, and took some, you know, took a couple guitars, and I finally kind of feel back on my feet, like after kind of months of creatively being like a little bit stuck.
And I feel like, you know, being the artist that you are, that you're so used to doing the stuff on your own and the way that you do it. I feel that, you know, with like success, it also might be a little stressful at the same time, because as you kind of mentioned, like now there's a new bar. So as you're working on new material, do you see you kind of like reconstructing yourself as an artist or your voice or your lyrics at all?
Um, yeah, and that's something I'm super conscious of and super aware of trying to not get too deep into that hole. I think it's so tempting in any art form to kind of like try and recreate your most successful piece of work. But the reality is I'm never going to write a better I Don't Know You Yet. That's just not going to happen. I'm never going to write a better Dirty AF1s. I'm never going to write a better Mars. I'm never going to write a better version of any of my songs that already exist. And so as tempting as it is to try to do that, I constantly am reminding myself to kind of push to the next great thing that I can offer to the world. I think just as far as just working by yourself in general, I think like what I've learned is that, at least for me personally, like the highs are higher and the lows are lower. So like when I made I Don't Know Yet by myself, and it was like 100% my creation from my own brain, and people were connecting with it, like it was one of the most incredibly outstanding, like euphoric feelings in the world. But then like when I'm by myself in this studio and like 16 hours later, I still have like not one line to show for myself, like it's like that much worse. You feel that much worse about yourself. And at the end of the day, that's just kind of like the risk that I'm willing to take to make things that I think are really good.
Now, I feel like this is going to be a hard question, but usually the song that breaks out into the world is not really the song that the artist is like the proudest of. Like, is there a particular song that you've written that you're the most proudest of? And if so, which one is it and why?
Which one is it? Wow. Well, yeah. Well, I will say I am very proud of I Don't Know Yet, because I feel like lyrically and just like thought level wise, like that is very on par with the way that I want to be seen as an artist, for sure. I think just like general pride wise, like I'm incredibly proud of Dirty AF1s. It's the first song I put out, and I think that like for me was like the first song that I wrote that I was like 100% sure of. Like I don't know, for me, like as an artist, like the bar is believability. Like that's the only thing that matters. It's sonically, lyrically, melodically, groove wise, nothing matters unless I actually believe the words that I'm saying. And that was one of the first songs that I remember being like, I believe every single word, melody, groove, piece of this song wholeheartedly.
That's cool that it was like your first track and that's the one that kind of like speaks to you.
Yeah.
That's so sick. Now, lastly, aside from the success of I Don't Know You Yet, you also got to remix Selena Gomez's Rare, which is like, it's not like you just did it for yourself and posted it on your channel. It was like something that she genuinely promoted as well. So how did this kind of happen for you? And, what was it like recreating this track?
Yeah, it was really cool. I was honored when they asked me to do it. Like her team is super cool. Obviously she's an absolute legend and an enormous cultural figure. I think the coolest part for me was that they didn't want me to do like a remix. They wanted me to essentially do like, hey, like if you would have produced this song, what would you have done? And whatever that is, do it. And so to have that artistic freedom and license to create whatever I wanted around, obviously an outstanding song was really, really special for me. And I think my favorite part about the memory of that creation process was that I was on tour actually doing it. So like that was all, I was just producing that in a 15 passenger van, like going 80 miles per hour on the highway. And like the guitar you hear in it is just like recorded on my iPhone in like a hotel room, like I think it was a nice reminder that like great art can kind of cut through no matter what the origin is.
Do you even know like how this kind of happened, how they discovered you, like how that came about?
I know some people like on our team, and we're on the same label, and I knew that like they were fans of mine, and obviously it was reciprocated from my end. And it just kind of came through the pipeline randomly one day. I literally was probably like in Alabama, I don't even know, just like driving on the highway, and they were like, can you do this in the next like 2 days? And I was like, yeah, I guess, sure. Like I literally just put my laptop on my lap and plugged my hard drive in and just started going, and like literally like 6 hours later it was done.
That's so sick. That's awesome. And that's just the beginning, man.
It doesn't always come that fast, but when it does, it is very nice.
And that's just the beginning. Like I can't imagine like how many more are going to be coming your way. Like that's sick. That's sick. Well, like moving forward, like what else is next for Alexander 23? Brainstorm just dropped. What else can fans expect?
Yeah, Brainstorm is out now, and I think emotionally I'm the most proud of that song, of anything I've ever written. Just like, I think it's rare that you finish something and you're like, that is absolutely all that I wanted and needed to say about that subject at this time. And finishing Brainstorm, like that's how I felt. And production wise, like that song went through like 5 iterations, and usually I would have given up on a song after like 3, but like
Damn.
I knew this was like important enough for me to say that I needed to find the right way to say it, and I think I finally did. And then looking forward, I think just like as always, just like a lot of just music is gonna come out. At some point, I've been writing again for the first time in like a month or two, and it's starting to feel really, really good. And I certainly have a lot of stuff to say. So yeah, more music.
Amazing, dude. Well, thank you for taking the time. I'm glad that we can finally make this happen.
Yeah, you
And
as well. I
I'm excited
appreciate
for
it.
more stuff.
No doubt. Coming soon.